In Dhaka, mornings don't begin in silence. They erupt in a familiar chaos. Honking horns, hurried footsteps, rumbling engines, but amid the noise, the real danger remains invisible: the air. It's thick with dust, industrial smoke, and microscopic toxins. This is Bangladesh, officially the most polluted country on Earth. And here, every breath could be taking days off your life. But how does a country that contributes less than 1% of global carbon emissions become one of the hardest hit by pollution? What happens when the very systems designed to sustain life, its rivers, its roads, even its rain, turn toxic instead? The answers lie in a perfect storm of runaway urbanization, crumbling infrastructure, political inaction, and something even more deeply human: the fight for survival. This is not just a story about environmental breakdown. It's a story about people, about what happens when there's nowhere else to go, and how a country struggles to breathe, to drink, and to endure in the face of a modern environmental emergency. Bangladesh has emerged as one of South Asia's fastest-growing economies. In just a few decades, it has evolved from a largely agrarian society into a global manufacturing hub, especially in the textile sector. This economic boom has lifted millions out of poverty, but it's also brought the country's environment to a breaking point. Nowhere is this tension more visible than in Dhaka. The capital buzzes with human energy, but its air tells a different story, choked with emissions from brick kilns, aging vehicles, construction dust, and unregulated factories. The rivers are worse. Once the veins of the city, they've become dumping grounds, darkened by sewage, plastic, and industrial chemicals. Each day, Dhaka generates over 6,000 tons of solid waste. A large portion of it is never collected. Drains clog and spill, roads flood after light rain. The soundtrack of the city is relentless. Engines, construction, shouting, the hum of a city constantly over capacity. And yet, the population keeps growing. People keep arriving, seeking jobs, education, escape from climate-vulnerable villages. Today, over 23 million people are crammed into an area smaller than most global capitals. That level of density places crushing pressure on housing, transport, healthcare, and basic utilities. In many areas, families of 6, 8, even 10 share a single room. Water is rationed. Power cuts are routine. Clean air and safe drinking water, no longer daily necessities, but luxuries. The crisis in Dhaka isn't just about pollution, it's about scale. A megacity expanding faster than its infrastructure can catch up. A population trying to move forward while the systems they rely on continue to collapse. By nearly every environmental index, Bangladesh is in the middle of a crisis. But if you want to see it, you don't need to check a graph. You just need to step outside and take a breath. That simple, unconscious act, breathing, is no longer safe in its capital city. Dhaka consistently ranks among the top 3 most polluted cities in the world. On some days, it tops the list. Its air quality index often exceeds 300, a level labeled hazardous by global standards. That means the air isn't just dangerous for vulnerable groups, it's a threat to everyone. Hospitals overflow, pharmacies run out of inhalers, schools close their doors before noon. And yet, life goes on because it has to. Most people can't afford to stay indoors or move away. Their jobs, families, and futures are here, and that means enduring a reality where every breath is a health risk. To grasp the full scale of it, spending a day breathing in Dhaka's air is like smoking between 25 and 50 cigarettes. Every single day. For children, the effects are especially devastating. Their lungs are still developing, their immune systems more fragile. Many suffer from chronic coughs, asthma, and recurring infections before they ever step into a classroom. But it's not just children. Adults are being affected in silent, irreversible ways. Rates of lung disease, cardiovascular problems, and strokes have all increased. The Air Quality Life Index estimates that poor air quality is reducing life expectancy in Bangladesh by an average of 5.4 years. In some districts, that number is even higher. And while the air suffocates from above, the water poisons from below. Nowhere is this more visible than in the Buriganga River, once the lifeblood of Dhaka. Its name still echoes in poems and folk songs. But today, it flows black, thick with chemical waste, human sewage, and layers of plastic. The river is biologically dead, no fish, no oxygen, and yet it's still being used. Every day, you'll see people wading into it to wash clothes, rinse vegetables, or bathe their children. Some even drink from it, not because they don't know better, but because there's no other option. In the city's poorest neighborhoods, clean water is either unavailable or too expensive to buy regularly. A family may choose between paying for safe drinking water or buying food. You can guess which one wins. Factories line the riverbanks, discharging everything from dye and detergent to heavy metals like lead, arsenic, and mercury, often without any kind of filtration. And this isn't just happening in one location. Across Bangladesh, more than 80% of industrial waste is released untreated into water systems. Rivers that once sustained life now carry its poison. These environmental hazards aren't abstract. They have faces. The child with a persistent cough that won't go away. The pregnant woman unable to find clean water. The elderly man whose lungs are permanently scarred from years of exposure. Skin diseases are common. Diarrheal infections spread rapidly in the slums. In some neighborhoods, rates of gastrointestinal illness are among the highest in South Asia. Even cancers, once rare here, are becoming more common, particularly among those who live near industrial zones. And while there are attempts to track and contain the problem, data often lags behind reality. Air monitors are few and far between. Water testing is sporadic, and many communities simply fall off the radar. The scope of the problem is so massive that it's easy to feel numb, but beneath the statistics are millions of real people trying to survive in a collapsing environment. And that's what makes this more than just an environmental issue. It's a public health disaster. It's a development emergency. It's a human rights crisis. But here's the deeper question. If the problems are so clear, why hasn't anything changed? The answer isn't a secret. In fact, it's everywhere, in the bricks, the clothes, the food, the traffic, even the air itself. Pollution isn't just a byproduct in Bangladesh. It's part of the system. And changing it means shaking the very foundations of how the country works. Take brick kilns. There are over 7,000 of them operating across the country, especially around Dhaka. Most are relics of another century. Unregulated, coal-fired, built without regard for efficiency or safety. They belch out thick black smoke, filled with carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and fine particulates that lodge deep in the lungs. Why haven't they been replaced? Because they're cheap. Because the bricks they produce are needed for everything, from roads and offices to the booming housing sector. And because for many poor families, these kilns are the only available form of income during the dry season. Try to shut them down, and tens of thousands could lose their livelihoods overnight. So the kilns stay, sometimes illegally, sometimes in plain sight. And the factories? Bangladesh is the second largest exporter of garments in the world. The shirts and jeans hanging in closets from Berlin to New York may well have been stitched together in a building on the banks of the Buriganga River. But with little enforcement and few incentives to treat wastewater, many of those factories still dump dyes, chemicals, and solvents directly into the river system. International brands make public promises about sustainability, but on the ground, enforcement is spotty. Inspectors are few, and factories that try to upgrade often find themselves priced out of contracts. In a global market that rewards speed and low cost, environmental safety is too often an afterthought. Even food isn't spared. In many markets, vegetables are rinsed with polluted water. Fish is left exposed near open sewers. Meat is handled without refrigeration, while flies move freely between garbage heaps and vendor stalls. It's not always negligence, it's survival. Traders and sellers are doing what they can with what they have, and what they have is often not enough. Then there's the traffic. Every day, millions of people spend hours trapped in a grid of exhaust, dust, and blaring horns. The roads are choked with aging buses, private cars, CNGs, rickshaws, and delivery trucks, many of them decades old and poorly maintained. Vehicle inspections are rare. Emissions regulations are loosely enforced. The result? The streets have become moving engines of pollution. Even the simple act of walking becomes dangerous. Solid waste, too, piles up by the ton, more than 6,000 tons a day in Dhaka alone. Yet only about half of it is formally collected. The rest clogs drains, floats in canals, or burns slowly in alleyways, releasing toxic smoke into neighborhoods. Municipal waste services are underfunded, overstretched, and under-equipped to keep up with the city's explosive growth. The truth is painfully clear. The systems weren't built for this many people, this much waste, or this kind of pressure. And now, they're breaking. So again, why hasn't change come? Because every solution has a cost. Force brick kilns to modernize, and the price of bricks rises, impacting housing for millions. Shut down non-compliant factories, and garment workers, mostly women, lose their income. Enforce stricter waste laws, and entire informal sectors of the economy disappear. In a country where many live day to day, long-term environmental goals often get traded for short-term survival. The state has limited capacity. Corruption adds friction. And for a government trying to balance growth, employment, and international competitiveness, pollution becomes the price of progress. But that doesn't mean people aren't trying. Across Bangladesh, grassroots efforts are pushing back. NGOs operate mobile clinics in slum areas, treating illnesses linked to pollution and poor sanitation. Community-led cleanups reclaim riverbanks, planting trees, and building awareness. Pilot programs have introduced cleaner kiln technology that cuts emissions by more than half, though adoption remains limited. Some schools, even in under-resourced areas, are introducing environmental education, teaching children about hygiene, sustainability, and their rights to a safe future. And a few factories, under pressure from global buyers, are beginning to invest in wastewater treatment. Their example could become a model, if others follow. But these are patches on a much larger wound. They show what's possible, but they can't fix what's broken on their own. Not without bigger shifts in policy, enforcement, and above all, political will. Because what's happening in Bangladesh isn't just a story of neglect. It's a story of trade-offs between growth and health, between today's paycheck and tomorrow's future. And the question now is whether that balance can shift before the damage becomes irreversible. What's clear is that despite the overwhelming challenges, people in Bangladesh are not giving up. Across Dhaka and beyond, small stories of resilience are unfolding every day. Local engineers are designing low-cost filtration systems for homes. Activists are lobbying for environmental education to be added to national school curriculums. Some garment factories, under pressure from international buyers, are beginning to invest in wastewater treatment. The government, too, has begun taking steps. New environmental regulations have been announced. Several high-polluting brick kilns have been shut down. There are plans for relocating industrial zones away from residential areas. But implementation remains a major hurdle. Meanwhile, international partnerships are slowly forming. Non-governmental organizations, development agencies, and research institutions are working together to pilot clean energy technologies and sustainable urban design. The challenge is huge, but the momentum, though slow, is building. At its core, the situation in Bangladesh is about more than pollution. It's about equity, about whether vulnerable communities will be given the tools to protect their health, their homes, and their future. Because what's at stake isn't just cleaner air or safer water. It's the right to live without fear that your environment will make you sick. It's a fight for survival, but also a fight for dignity. And yet, amid the smog, the poisoned rivers, and the broken systems, there are people who refuse to surrender. Across Bangladesh, resilience is not just a trait, it's a way of life. In Dhaka's crowded neighborhoods, local engineers have started building low-cost filtration systems using sand, charcoal, and simple piping. They're not perfect, but they help remove the worst contaminants from household water, offering families a little more safety, one bucket at a time. In community centers and schools, activists push to make environmental awareness part of the national curriculum. They teach children not just to memorize facts, but to understand how air and water quality affect their lives. In many of these classrooms, the students already know it firsthand. Their lungs burn when the air index rises. Their stomachs twist after drinking what looks like clean water. Some garment factories, under pressure from international buyers and watchdog organizations, have begun installing wastewater treatment systems and switching to cleaner dyes. It's slow, it's expensive, but it's happening. And when one factory changes, it can set a precedent for others to follow. Even the government, long criticized for inaction, is beginning to stir. New environmental laws have been announced, including mandates for brick kiln modernization and stricter limits on industrial waste. Several high-polluting kilns near Dhaka have been closed. There are discussions about relocating entire industrial zones away from residential areas and waterways. On paper, these are big steps, but on the ground, implementation is a different story. Corruption, limited capacity, and bureaucratic inertia remain major barriers. And in many areas, enforcement is more promise than practice. But something is changing, slowly. At the same time, international partnerships are starting to form. NGOs, development agencies, and research institutions are collaborating with local governments to pilot clean energy tech, improve waste collection systems, and introduce sustainable urban planning models. In some cases, satellite data is being used to track illegal dumping and deforestation in real time. In others, financial incentives are being offered to industries that meet pollution benchmarks. The results are mixed, but they're real. And in a crisis, this vast, even small victories matter. Because while it's true that local efforts alone can't reverse decades of damage, they can build momentum. They can change narratives, and they can buy time. Time for better policies, time for public pressure to grow, time for the next generation to rise with more knowledge and more power than the one before. At its core, the fight in Bangladesh isn't just against pollution. It's a fight for dignity. It's the right to live without fearing that the air you breathe or the water you drink might kill you. It's the right to raise your children in neighborhoods where health isn't a luxury. It's the right to ask your leaders for clean rivers, safe streets, and systems that protect, not poison, you. And while these rights are often denied, they're not forgotten. They live in the mother who walks an extra mile each day for cleaner water, in the teacher who turns trash into a lesson, in the young coder building an app to report illegal dumping, in the brick worker who wears a homemade mask even when no one else does. In every person who refuses to accept that this smog, this sickness, this system is all they deserve. These are not glamorous stories. They rarely go viral, but they matter. Because in a world where environmental collapse often feels too big to fight, Bangladesh reminds us of something easy to forget. You don't need perfect solutions to start fixing things. You just need people willing to try. If you've made it this far, thank you. This isn't just a story about pollution in Bangladesh. It's a reflection of how inequality, inaction, and short-term thinking create long-term disasters, and how the people most affected often have the least power to change it. But awareness matters. If this opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Look deeper into the global systems that shape these outcomes. From supply chains to climate policies to the industries we support, often without realizing the cost. Support the people and organizations on the ground trying to fix what's broken, because this fight isn't just about Bangladesh, it's about justice, dignity, and the right to live without fear that your own environment will make you sick. And if you're watching this from a place with clean air and safe water, remember, that's not a given everywhere. It's a privilege, one that comes with responsibility. So speak up, ask questions, stay curious, because silence helps no one and change begins with knowing. Thank you for watching, and if you want more stories like this, global, honest, and human, consider subscribing.